Hi, guys.
We're back.
So today we have on a man that I respect a ton.
Yes.
Yeah, Leanna too. So he's technically my brother-in-law, but he's kind of like, he really is like my brother from another mother. Like he is, if he were not somebody that I was forced to be family with, I would choose him as a friend because when I think of men that I respect, he's like at the top of the list.
Aw.
And I think part of that is because, which is the whole topic of today's episode, he's a vulnerable man. He feels how he feels, but he's also like a masculine man. And it's beautiful to me how he has combined both of those, like to be a man's man, but also be a vulnerable man who is concerned about things like self-esteem and feeling your feelings and having tough conversations, which some men do struggle with, which is why
I think it's been a thing throughout history that, you have to be a man, you can't cry, you can't talk about your feelings because you're a man. Man,
Yeah,
and
I think all that's coming to a head now,
Yeah, and I think that's a huge topic of conversation that people are having is like to feel the feelings and talk about it and have the uncomfortable conversations and
men's mental health is suffering out there because they're not allowing themselves to feel how they feel, and they're not, and women play a role in that as well. Like we have been taught that men shouldn't feel and men shouldn't cry. Mm-hmm. And I think that having this conversation today is just going to be so beautiful and so important for women who have men in their lives to see this from their standpoint. And then also for men who feel the immense pressure to be manly and to know that it's okay to combine both of those things, like being manly and having feelings.
And since Dennis does it so eloquently in his life, this is our guest speaker today. Mr. Dennis Lysak, thank you for being on the podcast today. Thank you for being vulnerable with us today and talking about, such a touchy subject, I guess. Yeah.
So can you start us off just by telling us like if we were to say, okay, who's Dennis Lysak, like what you do, what your background is, start us off with that maybe.
Okay. So first off, I would not have typically done this, but Holly, you're my sister. Leanna, I've known you. We've had some difficult conversations, and I admire both of you guys for what you guys do, and just how much I've seen you guys grow personally and professionally in what you guys do. So, Dennis Lysak, I don't know what to say. I've been in uniform since the age of 17. I'll say that. I've worn many hats. I started out active duty Marine Corps, transitioned into the Reserve and National Guard component. I've been a structure firefighter. I have been a correctional professional. I do wildland fire. So I've been in uniform my entire life, and it's a very type A personality career field, and I've got to work with some amazing people, and I've also got to see the darkness in the world, whether it be the darkness of war or dealing with people in the prison system and seeing what they've done to. It's such a negative environment. So I've had to build up my resiliency and endure a lot of struggles and hardships. So, but other than that, I'm a father, I'm a husband, son, I have my faith. But I'm just a public servant, and I enjoy teaching, mentoring, and leading people, and just sharing my experience so that they can learn and grow and don't have to go through the same thing that I did in my life. And it's totally okay because, how do I put this? I can wear two hats, and the pendulum swings both ways. I know how to take care of business. But I also know how to take care of myself and be vulnerable and seek guidance and seek assistance from other people. So that's who I am. So.
Awesome.
One of the things I love about you too is, and what puts you in a really good position to be on this podcast is you're often in leadership positions, and a lot of people that are under your leadership respect you as a leader. And I think that it's so important for the leaders in the world to just lead by example and allow their voice to be heard on these tougher conversations.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank you again for coming on and doing this, because I just think it's so important.
You know, I had this situation happen, and I want to talk about this before we talk about the vulnerability piece. It's one of those things that screamed out at me, okay? So I was having a conversation with a male employee. I, too, am a supervisor. And having a conversation with him, and he goes, "We can tell when you're not okay, and we just need you to be stable all the time."
And he was asking you this.
Yes, that was his feedback to me about, you know, if I could do anything better as a supervisor.
Well, because men are seen to be like they have to be stable all the time.
And so I think his perspective kind of intertwined with my perspective, and my perspective is that we're all human and we're okay. It's okay not to be okay. And if you're in a leadership role, it's okay to show vulnerability. So that's where that led. So I think I'm sure you've heard that. I'm sure you've heard that as a man and a leader.
Yeah, I think that's great, because what you just said will hit on some of the things that I will talk about today. So
Perfect.
I think it's great.
Yeah. So as a man, what do you think of when we say, like, what do you think of men being vulnerable, or how a man is vulnerable? What are your thoughts on that?
All right, so let's break. What is vulnerability? What does that look like? That could mean a lot of things to a lot of people. You know, so you can look it up. Definition is, you know, to harm, susceptible to harm or neglect, you know, capable of being physically or emotionally wounded. So there's a lot of aspects that we could go. We could talk about physical wellness. We could talk about emotional. We could talk about spiritual. But going back to that, what do men think? What do I think about men being vulnerable? I'm a little bit older. I grew up in a time where it was suck it up, drink water. Take 800 milligrams of suck it up and continue on. Drink water, all right? Mm-hmm. Bottle everything up. You got to be a tough guy, right? And so that's how I was raised. That's how I grew up. I had to be a tough guy. There was no sense of emotion. I joined the Marine Corps when I was 17 years old during the global war on terror. So my whole military career has been focused on deployments and going overseas and being a tough guy and just handling business. So there was no talks about, you know, feelings or the stuff that we said. So a lot of my life was sucking it up and just bottling it up, and that takes a toll mentally, physically. It drains you. So, but kind of like what you said, Leanna, it's being vulnerable is part of it's being human. You know, it's not a gender thing. You know, our bottles can only feel so much. That we can only take so much physically, emotionally before we break down and we start to deteriorate and we become a liability and no longer an asset to our friends, our family, our organizations. So I think back in the day, there was a stigma. There was a negative stigma about being vulnerable, that you're not a manly man if you talk about your feelings or whatever that looks like. But I think with this day and age, with PTSD, the amount of suicides and stuff like that we're seeing, the substance abuse, you know, chemical dependency, all of that stuff, that it has just taken so much of a toll, and it's actually started shedding light onto mental health when it comes to men specifically. And I think it's good that there's a lot of programs coming out there and resources out there to help us kind of learn and grow. Like, I can't be a good father, I can't be a good husband, I can't be a good leader if I'm not in the right headspace. I need to be situationally aware, I need to make sound and timely decisions and be able to effectively, you know, do my job, you know, in whatever role or aspect that I do. So what do I think of men being vulnerable? Like, if you were to ask me that, 2002 to, I don't know, I just say most recently, I tell you, that I thought it was a negative thing. But after the hardships that I've endured personally, and I think it's part of the total wellness is you have to be vulnerable. There is a little bit of, everybody learns from challenges, right? So there is some good and there is some personal growth when you endure these hardships. And the only way that you can move past that is to be vulnerable and actually talk about it with somebody who maybe has more experience or knowledge on the topic, so you can learn and grow and put those in your toolbox so you can be resilient. So when you do encounter those situations, you could bounce back more quickly.
Is that how your vulnerability has grown? Like, how did you go from the guy in 2002 who would have said vulnerability's dumb to the guy now who, if we're being honest, I've probably cried more with you than with maybe all but one other man in my life.
Yeah.
And because we have a lot of really good conversations, like vulnerable, good conversations. So how did you go from that guy in 2002 to the guy that you are today? Like, what were the things that you faced that helped to evolve that in your character?
So starting out in the military at a young age, during the time of war, deployments, doing what I needed to do, right? And just trying to be the tough guy, type A personality, very competitive, and all that stuff. There were hardships that I endured throughout my entire life that I just sucked up, that I just ignored. And it started taking a toll on me.
And these are big things, just to touch on that. Like people, you've lost people in the military. You've witnessed
Correct.
things that are really, really hard. And I just want to point that out for other people that have people in the military. Like, what you guys go through and the things that you endure is a big freaking deal. And I think that as civilians, that don't have to encounter that, we underestimate the toll that can take on somebody's mental wellness.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. On the military aspects, we've seen our friends die. We have seen death in combat. The fireside, rolling up to a emergency medical scene and seeing someone's loved one deceased, and we're trying to work them and bring them back, and their family members are crying. We've seen bad accidents in corrections. Mm-hmm. I've seen some horrible assaults on staff and on other inmates. I've seen just so much negativity in this world, and it's hard to, it's hard to just look the other way. It will always sear a memory in your brain, and it just compounds and it compounds and it compounds, and you'll develop these triggers that you'll be driving by, I'll say this. I was in Scottsdale the other day, and I drove past the first an intersection where I had my first code, and elderly man was slumped over in the turn lane. Heart stopped. I drove past that intersection, and it just triggered that memory. And I remember the whole scene from start to finish, from when we got on scene to the hospital. So you develop these triggers. And if you don't deal with them, if you don't communicate with them, you're just going to be an emotional wreck, and it totally distracts you from what you got going on. You lose situational awareness. You lose your cognitive ability to make sound decisions. So it's important to talk about it. So
before you go on, I just want to say, like, what's coming up for me when you say that, like, we have men in our lives, and let's say this is what's happening in your head, and your family's in the car with you. Your family doesn't know that that's what's going on in your brain. No. And if you're not vulnerable enough to talk about that, all of a sudden you're acting like maybe sometimes a jerk. And they're like, what? Why are you being so mean? And they don't understand that that's what's going on in your head. So then, like, your family life is suffering, and you're suffering yourself on this loop
because you're not talking about it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So to go on to how I ended up becoming vulnerable and actually starting to work on my emotional, spiritual wellness. And so I would say all of these compounding events. So started in the Marine Corps 2002, got out, went into the Reserve and National Guard component in '07, and that's when I started my structure career. From about '07 to 2010, just everything started compounding, and which led me to some alcohol abuse, going to the VA, being injured in the military, go to the VA. Unfortunately, the VA care wasn't that great at that time, and they just put Band-Aids on everything. And so really it was temporary fixes, and it was just hide it, stuff it down. They just wanted to treat, the symptoms. And so all of that led to where I was drinking a lot, and I was taking the medications excessively just so I can try to function, which led to me being jobless and homeless. And I hit rock bottom because I was never ever talking about or dealing with the root of all the issues. So at that time, when I ended up becoming jobless and homeless, I was like, this is not who I want to be. This is not the life that I want to live. I actually, humbled myself and sought help. And that's, through those initial steps of actually, going to counseling or talking to people that have been through similar situations is how I became more vulnerable and being able to talk about and deal with these situations, which has helped me tremendously become more resilient. And, I've been truly, truly blessed because I could have been a statistic. I don't know how. I've asked God several times, like, why me? Like, I should be a statistic. I should be passed away right now. With the decisions that I have made in my life and the hardships that I've been through. But luckily I sought help and I became vulnerable enough to talk about it. And you know what? I don't care what people think about me because I know what I've done. I know what I've seen. I know what I'm capable of. So me talking about a few things to make sure that I'm in my right headspace for my friends, my family, that means the world to me. And if I can teach someone one thing, if they can learn from me, one little hardship, and they can overcome that, I think that I've done my job as a human being. Not only as a leader, but as a human being.
Yeah, we're all given these specific journeys, and I think, because you've had the experiences you've had, you're in a unique position to, you said you reached out to people that had been, a little further down the path than you were, or had been through some of the things that you've been through. You've been through some of the things that these people listening have been through. And they're going to hear this and feel seen and feel heard. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's why you're still here. You know what I mean? You're here and you get to act as a leader in a lot of different roles in your family and your work life. And you get to affect change. You get to have a voice, and you get to be an example of how good life can be, and that it doesn't have to stay there. Mm-hmm. And you're a person that's on the path a little bit further that people can look to, like that lighthouse.
Mm. That's perfect. So I heard you walk through your process of how you went from then to now. Was there ever any challenges within that process, either that you created or that were in, so to speak, in your way?
There's challenges you're going to encounter all the time. Life is not easy. And you're going to encounter twists, turns, ebbs, and flows through your entire life. A lot of the challenges that I faced was because of myself. I was hard-headed. I did not want to, because the way that I grew up, the professions that I've held was type A personality. I didn't want to let go of that persona, so that was the biggest hardship for me. The biggest challenge was just to humble myself and say, you know what? I'm not okay. This is not okay. I am being self-destructive to myself, and it is destroying my relationships with family, friends, professional relationships. It destroyed a lot. So that was the biggest hurdle, is just to be like, to let it all go and just be like, you know what? I'm not perfect. I can't be, you know, I can't be that guy all the time. That I do need help, and I do need to talk about certain things that I'm encountering, because nobody ever has all the answers. No one does. Until you've lived it and been through it, you're not going to have the answers. So seeking mentorship and counseling or guidance from somebody, and just even letting it go, means a lot. So that was the biggest hardship for me, is to put my pride aside, to humble myself, to be self-aware, and do that self-reflection and be like, okay, maybe I'm not the subject matter expert in this field, that I do need the help. So
do you think that self-awareness comes with age, or is that something you had to actively like work on to be more self-aware?
So I think it comes with age, but I think as we grow older, that's when we get that wisdom, right? I wouldn't say that it's just a specific trait or quality that you have to pursue. And I wouldn't necessarily say that it's an age thing, but as you get older and a little bit more wise, I think you're more cognizant of it. And that enables you to be more situationally aware and be like, take that step back, detach from everything that's going on, and being like, okay, let me look at this real quick, because this is not okay. This is not right. So
Yeah.
So what do you think, like, for the men that are listening to this, like, let's say they've never done any of this work being vulnerable yet, and they recognize that maybe they need to start doing some of that, what would be like the first steps in bridging that gap, like, and in being in that uncomfortable place where you have to start feeling uncomfortable being vulnerable for the first couple times?
So, I mean, really the real first step is going to be building that team. So you have to have somebody you can talk to, whatever that looks like, you know? You're not going to just, so in this day and age, right, I am not going to walk up to somebody that I don't know and be vulnerable. I'm not, because
that's dangerous.
Absolutely, it's dangerous. I'm a protector of my family. I am a protector of the soldiers, the Marines, the firefighters, everyone that I've led, right? So I'm not just going to go out there wear my heart on my sleeve or be that guy. So most importantly, when it comes to like total wellness, is that social aspect, right? Hitting that dimension is building that support system and developing positive relationships, you know, and it's not going to be one person. It can't be one person, because no one person has done it all or seen it all. Like me specifically, I have a tribe, and Holly, you know, we've said this, it takes a tribe to raise a family. That it is not one person. I may talk to you, Holly, for a certain thing, and I may go to another friend. Like, each person might have their own challenges that they've endured, and that you would consider their subject matter experts. So it's build a team that you can trust. Is just recognize and just start developing that team.
You know, if you're really in line with all of that, then your team kind of comes to you. That's what I'm noticing.
Do you have, so you're getting ready to be deployed on a tour to Africa for a year. Do you have like a person or people in your life that have been deployed before, that like a person, like a mentor in that area? Like, because I would imagine leaving for a year and having to deal with all the emotions that come with that is difficult. Is there like a military person that you talk to in that capacity that has helped you to feel a little bit more comfortable about leaving?
So, luckily, in my current organization and the current team that I have, there is, I would say, one person right now who I deployed with back in 2012 to Afghanistan that I mentored through the ranks. When he first came in 2012, he was just a young, I wouldn't say he was a young man, but he was a young soldier that we endured Afghanistan together. And he's since then done multiple deployments and risen through the ranks. But most of my team is looking to me and him. You know, they're on the flip side to that, they're with mental health and the recognition of all that. There are so many programs out there and so many resources available to us that for me, it's not really a big deal. I've already endured. This is going to be my 4th deployment. So I kind of know what to go through. This is my first deployment as a married man and with a family. So that has been one of my struggles. But there are resources and stuff like that, and we just talk about it. I do have somebody that I rely on heavily on the spiritual aspect, and we've been praying and talking about, you know, starting a men's group and doing Bible studies over there. So we've really put things in God's hands, and then, you know, so I have that one individual that I talk to when it comes to spiritual wellness. I do talk to my buddy who I deployed with back in 2012 that we just kind of talk like, hey man, we got this. It's not a big deal. It's
Hype each other up.
Yeah,
You're the hype man.
Yeah. We got hype men's, you know, so we just do what we need to do.
So it sounds like you've really kind of built yourself this foundation for going into this potential tough situation. Well, it's probably going to be tough. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, but yeah, it sounds like you've built that team to support you during this time, and you're prepared for whatever may come.
I think preparation is a good...
As prepared as you can be.
Yeah.
What do you think, this is like a what came first, the chicken or the egg question. Like, what do you think came first? Because you are a person that I would say has a healthy relationship with yourself, like a healthy self-love. Do you think that you had the self-love before you became vulnerable, or do you think the vulnerability helped you to love yourself more?
Ooh, good one.
I would say the vulnerability helped me identify and recognize my strengths. Not only the challenges, but my strengths, and to appreciate kind of what I've endured. And like previously stated, I've prayed on this and I've asked, why me, why me, why me? But I truly believe I was put here for a reason, and it was to, you know, lead and mentor people that have similar professions as me, to work through challenges and be successful in the career fields that I've held. So definitely I was not self-aware. I didn't have necessarily the high self-esteem. I was just it was just that typical alpha male, you know, like I'm just a badass. Was I? Probably not. But I held that persona for a long time because realistically I didn't have the life experience. I was just trying to walk around like, you know, nothing fazed me. But when reality, that was all a lie. And, you know, it didn't come until I was a little bit older and I've actually endured some challenges, and that I was able to actually take a step back and realize that I have something to offer. And despite all the challenges, I'm not a statistic anymore. I'm doing well as a father. I'm doing well as a husband. You know, I'm doing well in my life, and I'm very blessed. And that's, I think, when I recognized that I had self-love and self-appreciation, and I understood what I had to offer and what I bring to the table, not only as a leader, but a father, a son, husband, and all of those aspects.
This is also bringing another question up for me that I didn't think about before. Men put this very high standard on strength. Like, to be an ultimate strong man is like the epitome of what it is like that every man is seeking, I feel like. And I feel like once you become a vulnerable man and you start to do all that internal work, like there's this perception that men who don't feel are stronger. But would you say that being vulnerable and working on that foundational stuff has actually made you stronger than you were when you were trying to suppress it?
I mean, absolutely. If you can recognize, going back to the definition, right? Susceptible to harm or neglect, capable of being physically or emotionally wounded. If you can recognize those areas that you are vulnerable in, whether it be spiritual, emotional, physical, or social, whatever domain you want to look at, you identify that as essentially a challenge, and an area that you need to grow personally or professionally, right? So, growth comes with these challenges, and being able to identify that and grow from that makes you a stronger person. Because I can focus on physical wellness all day. I could be the biggest, baddest person in the gym, but if I don't have that social, emotional, or spiritual, everything, that foundation is going to collapse. You need to have total wellness, and that's truly, truly what's important. You need to be a well-rounded person. And I've often said it a lot, is be, a jack of all trades, a master of none. Be well-rounded. I don't need to be the best at anything. I just need to be well-rounded and be able to identify those shortfalls and be able to adapt to them, apply those resiliency skills, and kind of just work through them. A true test of a man's character is how he reacts to after adversity, right? If you want to tuck your tail and run, hey man, that's you. That's who you're going to be. But in the face of adversity, and if you could take it on the chin and hold your head up high and be like, okay, I messed up, or this didn't go right. This is the changes I'm going to make in my life to make it better, for my profession, my family, whatever that is. That says a lot about a man, is being able to just be like, yep, take it, and just be like, I got this,
Well, and your definition that you've brought up, like you're opening yourself up to being hurt. Mm-hmm. That is brave. That is a strong man or woman, Yep. So I think that's that does make you stronger. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I like that. I like the way that you phrase that to make you think about that. Mm-hmm. What challenges do you think men in general face with being vulnerable? Do you think, obviously there's this stigma that society as a whole thinks men have to be strong and they can't be vulnerable, but is there anything else that comes up when we talk about, the challenges that men face with being vulnerable?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head. The biggest challenge is changing the culture to say that it's okay to have these mental health issues or whatever you're going to go through. It's, what I have written down in my notes is it's the biggest challenge of society. You're viewed as a beta, and no man wants to be viewed as a beta, right? We're strong. We're hunters, it's just that thing is, that's the biggest challenge you have to overcome, and you just have to humble yourself and realize nothing anyone says. If I walk up to a random stranger and he wants to call me a beta because I opened up to my friends or my family or I got counseling, his word means nothing, because he doesn't know me personally. He doesn't know me professionally. Nothing he thinks or says or does is going to affect me. I don't give people that power anymore. I don't. Because
it's like a pride thing.
You can call me whatever you want, and it means nothing. I'll just smile because, I know what I'm capable of. I know how to be the alpha when I need to be the alpha, and I know that through the challenges that I've endured, that I've grown, and I can handle my own, just in general, emotionally, spiritually, physically, all throughout the whole domains, because I've built those resiliency skills.
I like how you bring up the fact that you're not going to let other people's opinions of you be your definition.
Yeah, because a lot of men have that problem.
They do, and it's a lot of it takes the power away from the choice that you have to how you can react to that. And I think that's a big part of vulnerability, is knowing that you have the choice to react a certain way with things that are put in your path. And for men, that's always been the fight aspect, right?
Yep.
It's always been I have to be bigger. Yep. And you have the choice to not choose that. Yep. In times. I mean, I do feel like that could be fitting in some situations, But then in others, like how you're describing, like if you think of me in a negative way, I don't have to fight you on that. You can have that opinion, and I'm just going to be okay with that. And I think that's beautiful.
Absolutely. And this is by no means a quote of my own, but the quietest man in the room is the most dangerous man in the room. I'll say that.
Yep.
So, hands down, and that's how I approach life. I have nothing to prove to anybody who doesn't know me personally. I've gone through my own life challenges. I'm good with it. I know what I bring to the table. I know what I'm capable of.
That's amazing. I love your self-reflection that you're having right now, because this is like showing men like you can have this, and it's not cocky. It's just knowing yourself, and that's beautiful. So a lot throughout the episode so far, you've talked about your roles as, in the service industry, like military and firefighting and things like that, and wildfire. I also have a role in community service. I know I'm a woman, but it's almost like you have to play this part when you're serving your community in these capacities. As a man, how are you vulnerable while you're in those roles?
Yeah, are you vulnerable with the other men that are also in these roles, like with the other firefighters or the other military men?
So,
is that like an important part of the career itself, actually?
I wouldn't say it's a necessity to be in this, to be a part of this career field and the professions that I've done, but I will say that it's important as a leader. So there's a time and a place, right? I'm not walking around in front of my soldiers, the Marines, in any of the professions I have. As a leader, I'm not walking around just spilling my guts. Anytime that I have a bad day, I'm spilling my guts. But as a leader, what I do recognize is when I can identify, because I'm so self-aware and I can identify those signs and symptoms now, when I recognize that someone is having a bad day or something is just not right, they're quiet all of a sudden, there's a change in behavior, that's when I pull them aside and have that one-on-one. And it's like, hey, man, you do understand that there's programs, resources available to you. What I typically tell them is there's nothing that you could probably tell me that I haven't already endured that I can't at least share my experience with you. And whatever that looks like. So, just supporting those programs. So I would say that it's a one-on-one thing. So when I identify an issue with someone, is, truly reinforce the programs and the resources that we have available, and to get help. Understand that you need to have that total wellness, that you can't just be, physically fit, that you need to be emotionally, you need to, like, at least in my current career field, you need to be fiscally responsible. There's a lot of like financial hardship that sometimes comes with this job, especially with our seasonal employees, but also understanding that you need that work-life balance. Like it's okay to go hard in the paint and take on a lot of overtime, a lot of projects, a lot of missions or deployments or something like that, but you still have friends and family back home. Whether you're married or not, your immediate family, your moms, your dads, your brothers, your sisters, endure time away being on the fire line, time away being on deployment, multiple hours behind the walls in a correctional facility, or those 48-hour shifts at a structured department. Your family takes a toll because they're holding down that fort. So having that work-life balance as well, those are the things that I kind of preach to them. And if they are struggling, to talk about it and at least get the resources that are available. There is so much government funding that goes out there through grants, whatever, for these public safety professions, and no one takes advantage of them, especially in the military. We have, as taxpayers, we spend so much money on programs for resiliency, mental health, family readiness, all of this stuff, and no one takes advantage of those programs. but that's our hard-earned dollars in programs that no one's taking advantage of. So I highly encourage everyone, whatever agency you work for, whatever, whatever corporation you work for, just dive into what is available to you and take advantage of those. And even if your agency doesn't offer them, I guarantee there's a government program out there that can support you and your family to make sure that you have that, overall wellness and that you can get the mental health help that you need.
Yeah, especially since there's a big push. I've been seeing like a lot of HRs and, employee relations and human resources in different companies, outreaching for the mental health side of things and wanting to ask more questions about that. So,
well, and I like that what you said. I just want to highlight what you said about people in leadership roles have this unique opportunity, not a responsibility, an opportunity
I like
where
that.
they can see their people if they're struggling and just reach out to them. Sometimes that's all somebody needs is just, hey, I've
Are you all
noticed
right?
that, you're acting a little different. Are you okay? Like, just to have somebody say that to you sometimes is enough to change everything. So I love that you said that.
And also
It
as a
truly
leader,
goes a long way.
creating that safe space to allow your people to even come to you. Like, that's amazing. When I have somebody come into my office and they're like, can I shut the door? I'm like, yes, please. Let's talk.
And when you're vulnerable with your people, it gives them space to be vulnerable too.
Right, right.
Have there been times that, like, you weren't vulnerable when you look back now that you know what you know, like, that you think you could have maybe made a bigger difference, or times that you were vulnerable that it really changed the way something could have played out?
I think for me personally, I think everything happened the way that it was supposed to happen. Because
I always love that answer.
I do too. Divine intervention.
I mean, I can't stress that enough. Just because before I had my downfall and I endured everything, I was a young man. I was 25, so, and I wasn't necessarily in the middle management level. I wasn't. Yeah, I might have played key roles, but even though that I didn't feel that I could have made an impact, I probably could have. But I wasn't situationally aware to be cognizant of those opportunities to take advantage of that and put them underneath my wing. Like, I was strictly just like, I'm going to teach you how to fight fire. I'm going to teach you how to, do your job in the military, whatever that looks like. So as I progressed in my career, I absolutely, I recognize those opportunities and I try to capitalize on them every time I can. And oftentimes, which is a key point, is you as a leader and hell as a man, you have to sometimes open that door. Meaning that you'll have to open up and be vulnerable to them before they trust you and feel comfortable, So they may, whatever the situation might be, if you just open up to them, if you just understand and can recognize the core issue that they're trying to get at and what they're struggling with, and you can make that correlation, and you have a personal experience that you can share with them, that goes beyond leaps and bounds, and then that helps you mentor them and get them the resources that they need. So
This
leaders,
is making me
important.
think what you're saying about I lost it. Hold on, my brain short circuited, it'll come back. Okay, so I think sometimes what you said about things play out the way that they're supposed to play out. And I think that sometimes men and women both will look back on the way they handled things or on things that they did in their own personal life with a lot of shame. And I feel like shame is almost, a bigger issue for men than it is for women, because we talk so much. We women, we talk so much about things, our feelings and things, whereas men don't typically talk as much about it. What would you say to men who maybe are experiencing like bottled up shame over, behaviors that they had or lifestyles that they had or decisions that they made? Because I feel like that's part of this, in doing the work and recognizing that, you don't want to necessarily live that life. You end up with all these things that are bottled up, and a lot of those bottled up feelings are shame over decisions that you made. How do you forgive yourself as a man? Because that's viewed as more like a woman thing, like, oh, forgiveness, men don't forgive. They're, they're tough and they're manly, and you don't feel feelings, So I feel like specifically men have a hard time forgiving themselves. And what would you say to men that are maybe working through some of that?
The big thing is I mean, I've experienced that. I was very embarrassed and had a tremendous amount of shame for how my life went until the age of 25, and I decided to get the help. Like, I could be retired right now from other jobs. I could, I could have done, my life would have been completely different. But recognizing that you learn from everything, it's cliche to say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? But it truly does. But you have to be self-aware, and you have to self-reflect on it, and you have to make the changes in your life, and don't repeat those mistakes. Talk about it.
And feel the feelings.
Yeah. And just work through it. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to, be sad. It's okay to go through the grieving process. It's okay to do all of those things because it's human nature. We're all human. It's a part of life, and it's how we grow, and it's how we become more mature as human beings, and that's how we're going to lead, the people that, we're working with. It's how we're going to lead our families and stuff like that. So you just got to recognize it and kind of just accept it and work through it. Go through the process. It's okay. And if something is not, making sense to you, is hopefully you've built that support group, and you have that one person you can go to, and that's the big thing, is you just got to humble yourself. You're not perfect. You're never going to be perfect. And you just be able to recognize, do the self-reflection, take time, develop healthy habits, take time to yourself, self-reflect, and then come up with that game plan, that get right plan, so you can move forward, put it behind you. At this moment in my life, I am not ashamed of anything that I've done. It's made me who I am today, and I'm very blessed, and I can recognize that the stuff that I've been through can help somebody else. I'm okay with that,
I love that.
So
I do too. So do you continue to grow in your journey of being vulnerable, loving yourself, giving yourself grace? I heard that in there too.
Yep.
Do you continue that journey?
I think it's a process. It's a continuous cycle. It doesn't stop. You're always going to have to seek that self-improvement, right? Sometimes we get focused on one area of our life, and something may be pushed by the wayside, and that skill set or whatever you want to say kind of falls behind. So, I mean, if anyone's mastered the total wellness concept, and they have complete spiritual wellness,
Get a hold of
emotional,
us.
physical, and social.
Yeah, we'd like to have you on the podcast. Please reach out.
Absolutely. But I continue to grow, because challenges are always going to be there. Variables are always going to change. Yes, this is my 4th deployment, but as I mentioned, this is my 1st deployment as a married man and with kids. So I am struggling, and I've had to take time by myself, just to get away, self-reflect, calm down, assess, and then re-engage. All right, it's a constant process. It's not just something you learn and just, oh, I'm a subject matter expert now. It's something that you need to be cognizant of and be able to recognize personally, like when you're starting to feel those things. There's certain triggers, there's certain behaviors that you're going to start to feel or exhibit, and it's like, maybe I need to take a step back. I need to reassess before I blow up, or something, or I start going down that path of self-destruction. So it's a continuous thing, and I learn through every interaction with everybody that I deal with, and I'm personally growing every single day.
Or sometimes you do blow up, not necessarily you specifically, but men in general or women. Like sometimes we do blow up and then we have to self-reflect afterwards and like, okay.
That's where the grace steps in.
Yep.
Giving yourself grace.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um, what-
and once again, humbling yourself, and I'll openly admit, during this time, I had an argument with my wife the other day, blew up.
You did?
Was not
Just
good.
kidding.
But the next day, humbled myself. I had time to, I drove away. I did what I needed to do. I called my support group and was like, hey, this is what was said. This is what was done. Did I overreact? And I got their feedback, right? They play devil's advocate to me, and they're like, hey, man, this is my thoughts. This is my feelings.
Well, and you
Here,
have to take
you
their
know.
thoughts and feelings, but then also weigh like your own intuition with it,
Right.
like what's coming through for you. And I feel like sometimes when you hear somebody say something, like I'll call my reinforcement sometimes when I'm upset, and they'll say something like their advice to me or with their perspective on it, and it feels so completely wrong that I'm like, yeah, that's not how I'm feeling. And it's in hearing them say that I recognize it.
Yep.
So
Yep.
sometimes it's not what they say, like it's not their advice they give you. Sometimes it's
Your feeling through that
how you
advice.
feel through that advice.
Yeah, but also, like, I'll say one of my support group wasn't necessarily the subject matter expert when it comes to marriage. but just talking about it and hearing me say and talk through my actions and what was said, I was like, oh wait, that was an aha moment. Like, okay, that was the wrong approach, right?
Yeah,
Approach
sometimes
someone's
just saying it
response.
out loud, you get your
Absolutely.
own answer.
And
Yeah.
some people can do it through a journal. By all means, if that's your thing, do it through journaling. Some people just need to talk it out. Some people could talk to themselves about it and just self-reflect on it. Whatever works for you, implement all of those skills. I don't know what's going to work best for your viewers and stuff like that, but
Yeah,
you
everybody's
just have
different.
you just have to find what works for you. Try it
Niche.
out and just kind of go.
Speaking of your wife and women in general,
I want an end to that conversation too.
wait, and into what conversation?
How you said you and your wife got into an argument, you utilized your resources, and then you came back. What did that look like?
Good question.
Was it
Close
successful?
the loop. Good
Was it
catch there.
successful?
I
And
would
if it
say-
wasn't, what did you learn?
I would say it was successful. I mean, it was like, hey, swallowing the pride and just being like, you know what? I'm sorry. I shouldn't have reacted that way, but this is why I felt the way that I felt. You said this, I felt this. And I hate being cliche and going the counseling route and stuff like that, talking about feelings and stuff like that, but it's important to do. Is like if your
Communication is
spouse,
everything.
yeah, if your spouse, if your kids, whoever you're dealing with, whoever you have conflict with, or if you're not communicating what their actions, their behaviors, and what they're saying, how that affects you personally, you're never going to come to a compromise or a resolution. So,
And if they don't know
It-
what's going on in your head, why you're reacting the way they are, they can only assume what's happening. So
Correct.
that's what happens sometimes, and they don't always assume right.
yep. So, I mean, hell, for most people, all people know is like, he's leaving for a year. That must be hard. There's a select few that actually know kind of my mindset and how I'm mentally preparing and trying to get ready for this. So there's only a select few that actually know that. So anybody that just generally knows me just sees he's stressed right now, he's leaving, I understand. Well, they don't understand everything. They just see that I'm going to be gone for a while. So being able, and it, like I said, it went good. Apologized, talked through things. We're tracking on the same sheet of music right now.
Good.
Cool.
So, speaking of women, what advice would you have to women in the vulnerability spectrum? Like, we women, we're mothers to boys. We have brothers, we have husbands, we have fathers. In what ways can we women help to foster a better world where it's okay for men to be vulnerable?
So, first off, typically, men do not like to make decisions based off of emotion. Yeah, there may be some tit for tat arguments that are very emotional, but we are very logical, and we need time to process. So developing those healthy habits. So for me, I like to break away, and I like to go to the woods. That's where I find my peace. I'm a hunter. I love everything outdoors. I like to hike. That's where I find my peace. If I could get 1 hunt a year, 2 hunts a year, that's when I unload everything. I just go out into the wilderness. I'm by myself. I'm, in God's country. I'm taking in everything around me, the wilderness, the sky, everything, and I just can self-reflect. I can meditate. I can just let everything go and be one with nature, and that lets me decompress, gather my thoughts, and then I can re-engage. So understanding when your spouse is having a difficult time is understand whatever. Hopefully it's a healthy process. It's not just go to the bar and drink booze.
You're not saying understand that sometimes your spouse just needs to get wasted.
Yeah.
That's not the advice.
That's not the advice. But as long as hopefully he has some type of healthy outlet, understand that they may need time to themselves. The answers don't need to be, the questions don't need to be answered right then and there. Give them time to decompress. Maybe do whatever healthy behavior that they've learned to develop, and then come back and re-engage. Whether that be, I've even implemented the process of, hey, I'm not going to talk about this. I will write a letter. I will leave, write a letter, hand you the letter. You can read it, and then we can talk about it. So just finding those different tools that you can use in those situations, but women just need to understand that men need time to process sometimes. Mm-hmm. So
what about the children we're raising? So how do we make our boys feel like it's okay to be vulnerable and not shame them for it, or build a world in which they have some sort of healthy relationship with feelings?
So that's
if you could be taught differently, rewind to your childhood, what would have made it better for you to have developed those tools earlier? If your parents had different tools that they didn't have.
Having positive male role models. It can't come from the mother. It needs to be a man in that child's life, and it doesn't necessarily need to be, father to son. It's father to daughter. They need a positive male role model to be able to sit them down and talk through these things. I've talked to my daughter on several occasions. It's okay to feel upset right now. It's okay to go through these emotions. However, these behaviors are not acceptable. And just coaching them and talking them through that, and not just yelling at them and punishing them all the time and just having that knee-jerk reaction, is actually mentoring them, being a part of your child's life. So, even if you're a single mother out there, there is an uncle, there is a grandpa, there is somebody out there, even if it's a close male friend of yours that is doing well, there is a positive male role model out there for them to sit down with and just spend time with. Take them to the park, talk about what's going on at school or what's going on at home, and let them know that, one, it's okay to feel those things, but this is the behaviors you need to exhibit,
So you said earlier, you need a positive male role model, and sometimes that can't come from the mom. What's the difference between the two? What's the significance of the male model versus the female model for the child?
For probably the boy child mostly.
Yeah.
So the reality is it's society. It's culture. It's men are type A. We are the alphas. We have to be strong. We can't cry. We can't show emotion. We just got to be the tough guy all the time. So, when they look at a female, that's what they see. The persona's there. The stereotypes are there for men and women both. That's not going to change. What needs to change is the mental health aspect, is being okay to talk about these things and work through it. And so when they can see a stronger, positive male role model that is vulnerable, that can talk through it, that is going against the norm,
It's showing
of
them
what
what's
society is. And
You're
so
kind of parallel
it's-
processing.
Yep. So it's like, hey, cool, this guy, and I'm by no means saying that I'm anything special, but when my kids are extremely proud of me. But when they see prior service Marine, structure firefighter, wildland firefighter, corrections officer, I've been in uniform since 17, I'm going on my 4th deployment, and all these great things that they could brag to their friends about, when they can see that, and I can sit down and talk with them and be vulnerable with them and maybe shed a tear with them and talk through emotions with them, that's like, oh my God. That's like night and day difference for them. They're just like, well, my dad's out there saving the world, and here he is with me talking about a hard day at school, whatever it may look like, and being vulnerable. That says a lot,
Mm-hmm.
So.
That's a badass right there. I'm just saying.
Dennis Lysak, badass. We've reached about our closing time, but I want to know, do you have any closing advice or thoughts that you want to share that you haven't had a chance to during this with men that may be listening on this subject?
Man, I mean, we could probably go for another hour if we wanted. I mean, what I'm going to say is challenge yourself, get out of your comfort zone, read, listen to podcasts, build your team.
Specifically this one.
Yeah. In this day and age, technology is out there. I didn't have that growing up. I didn't have the interwebs like we do now, technology at my fingers. So there are so many resources out there. Listen to those podcasts, read, I would say at the core of my foundation, a lot of my, some of my knowledge and wisdom and stuff that I refer back to all comes from leadership, is reading those leadership books and then building on those from there, those self-help books and stuff like that. I mean, me personally.
Do you have a couple favorites?
I'll go through some podcasts. I mean, I love history books. I could talk about Call Sign Chaos. I could talk about Face and all these military leadership books, Art of War and all these things. Some podcasts that I found personally beneficial was The School of Greatness.
Love that one.
Lewis Howes, Jordan B. Peterson, and the Huberman Lab.
Love him.
So
Love
those
him.
three, when it comes to men's health, fantastic. And then lastly, I know it mainly pertains to, going back to the leadership and kind of the military background and stuff like that, and this is by no means anything of mine, it's the plus minus equals. Apply that concept. So
What's that
always
concept?
surround yourself with people that are better than you so you can learn from them. Always surround yourself with someone that is maybe less than you or below you so you could pour back into them and teach them what you know. And always surround yourself with someone who is equal to you, because that's going to make you competitive and push you to be better. So plus minus equals. Surround yourself with those three kind of people, and I think you could do great things.
That's amazing.
This has been such a good podcast.
It has. I'm
It's just making me
hopeful
so happy.
that all the men and maybe some women who are listening can share with men that they know that may be going through this shift in their lives. I just hope that this touches at least one person. And then, like you said earlier, Dennis, you did your job.
Yeah, listen to this badass talk about how you can be vulnerable. Okay, if he can do it, you can do it. The resources are available. All you have to do is reach out and try.
Yes.
Yep.
And thank you again for being a part of this journey with us and sharing your experience, strength, and hope.
Yep.
And, good luck on all of your upcoming endeavors.
Yeah. All right.
Awesome.
Thank you, fam. Love you guys.
Well, thank you.
Love you.